It's car con carne. Let's eat in the car. It's car con carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Alstyne.
And it is Car Con Carne, sponsored today by C&H Financial Services. C&H offers a variety of products ranging from traditional merchant accounts to a zero-cost payment processing solution, which eliminates the expenses tied to accepting credit cards. C&H also offers cost-effective commercial lending programs, which can help get your business the money it needs to make it through these unprecedented times. To learn more, and you should, contact C&H Financial Services at 855-600-2437 or go to chfs.us. I'm James Van Alstyne, and across the pond, we find the legendary, the iconic, the wonderful, the delightful Midge. Good morning, good afternoon, where you are.
Good, whatever it is, where are you? It's very early morning, I think, for you.
I get nervous whenever I have to deal with time zones. I like looking up online.
Yeah, I can't figure it out at all. I mean, it's interesting. People in Australia say, well, what time is that? And I'm thinking, I'm not quite, I don't know. It's got to be on the internet somewhere.
Exactly. I'm that guy who thinks, well, maybe I should get on the Zoom call about an hour early, just in case I screwed this up and he's waiting for me. But it all worked out. I'm glad to see you. You know, I'm in Chicago. You're over in the UK right now. You came to Chicago in January. You played City Winery. That already feels like 10 years ago. Oh,
yeah, it's a lifetime ago now. And, I've been coming to Chicago for quite a while. But the City Winery was absolutely perfect. A wonderful environment for the tour that I was doing, which was a real honest kind of impromptu, evening with, as I said, when I walk on stage during that tour, and I'd announced that I knew the first song and I knew probably what I was going to play as the last song, but I had no idea what I was going to play in between. And it really was audience led. So the winery was just absolutely perfect for that environment. It was great.
Let's talk a little bit about Chicago. It does seem like a very comfortable place for you to be. You recorded a live album here 7 years ago. What is it about this city?
I like it. It's like Glasgow, my hometown. I don't live in Glasgow anymore, but my hometown where I was born and brought up is it's a beautiful, rough and ready city with great characters. And Chicago is very much that. I mean, I suppose we're all fed the image of Chicago because of, thanks to the movies, the Tommy gun wielding, the mafiosa bosses. But then when you get there and you realize it's just another great city. And it's one of the cities in America that I can actually walk around. I enjoy, when I travel, I enjoy going to places and getting out the car and having a walk around the streets, which you can't really do in a lot of the cities on the West Coast. But you certainly can in Chicago. A lovely old city, lovely architecture. And as I've said many times, who can't fall in love with a city that dyes the river green on St. Patrick's Day? It's just glorious.
It's true. Talking about you performing, and yes, this most recent tour was the Q&A and everything, definitely a different approach. You still, when you tour, you still play the hits. You still play Fade to Gray. You still play Dear God, all that stuff. I've got to think, though, for the decades you've been doing this, statistically, you're always running the risk of letting somebody down because you're not playing their song.
That's inevitable. It doesn't matter what you do or how long you're on stage or how much of the spectrum of your past stuff that you do. There's always someone saying, oh, you never played that obscure B-side from the extra 12-inch mix that you did back in 1981. It's just the way it is. Humans are weird and complex characters. So it doesn't matter how much you try and cover all the bases. You never can. So, you have to expect that possibly, they might not have heard the favourite tune that they fell in love with when they were kids. But hopefully they'll leave at the end of the night having heard things that they didn't expect to hear that will maybe satisfy them a little bit.
That's it. So 8 months after you came through to the City Winery, We're all living online. You just launched the Backstage Lockdown Club. And before we get into the specifics, you said, I've spent the past 3 months of lockdown investing in learning how to broadcast high-quality, multi-camera, studio-based performances, capturing the intimate atmospherics a stage show would hopefully create. The pandemic has really forced us all to find ways to pivot and find new ways through and around it, hasn't it?
It has, and I suppose if you're kind of used to, being malleable, being flexible, and having to adapt to what circumstances around you dictate that you have to adapt to, then it's no great hardship. I mean, I've since, let me think now, 1982 or 83, I built my own studio. I built my first studio because I saw that was the future. I saw that, eventually I wouldn't have to go to a record label, or I wouldn't be on a record label. Someone somewhere would look at their calculations at the end of the year and say, well, this one doesn't make any sense anymore. It's costing us more to have them than not. And with your own studio, back then, I mean, it's a major investment, not just financial, but a massive learning curve to learn how to operate something like this. To me, I saw that as the ultimate investment, because with something like that and the knowledge to operate it and still be able to create, I didn't really need a label. So the idea that, I've been in lockdown like everyone else. I managed to get back from Australia back in early March. Managed to get the family all back from various parts of the world around me, and carried on working in my studio, creating new material. And then I thought, well, hold on a second, it's not that far a technological leap into the world of broadcast. So I figured out how to do it, and I've got my 3-camera system and my little digital audio visual mixing thing, and just learned how it worked. It's an extension of what I've done over the years, from jumping from guitar to learning synthesizers and programming. So it's not a great big thing for me.
I got a comment from the Facebook Live we're doing right now from Scott. He says, good morning, Midge. Good afternoon. The first live in studio was great. Can't wait until this Saturday for the next.
Good man.
Member of the Backstage Lockdown Club checking in.
Well, that's great. I mean, I love this. I love the fact that, I did my first one a week ago on Saturday. And I had people from all over the world. It's very odd having them all in my little environment here, my little studio. So I had people from Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, and Canada, and America, and I think that's fabulous that people can connect the way they have. I've been using a song of mine, "Are We Connected," as a kind of theme for the entire Backstage Lockdown scenario, and that's exactly what it is. It's a connection. It's a way of keeping people attached, musically and personally, and I find it quite an interesting process, doing my first broadcast in true technological style. Everything broke down 5 minutes before you to go on air. And I'm kind of used to that as well, having toured many years with Ultravox, with machines that wouldn't communicate with each other, that had to be adapted in order for us to be able to play live. So I'm kind of used to that. But I love the fact that the moment I went live, I had no idea what was going to play. And I was kind of dictated by the questions people were asking. It's in a way the kind of ultimate solution for the situation we all find ourselves in. It may be months, it may be years before we're all allowed, and I hope it's not, but before we're all allowed to be in the same room or the same field, watching and playing and, enjoying music. So this is quite a good alternative.
Absolutely. Talking about having your own studio, creating your own path, it seems that the industry today, and you've seen every aspect of the music industry, it seems that the industry today really favors an entrepreneurial spirit. And it seems like lots of opportunity for people who are willing to kind of go that non-traditional, actually more traditional route now of finding their own way, getting their own stuff out there, not waiting for an A&R person to hunt them down. It's empowering this time.
It is empowering, and it's kind of been that way since the advent of the internet. You know, when we realised that we didn't have to be locked down to one particular place. I always thought living, moving from Glasgow and living in London, which was the kind of epicenter of the music industry back in the 80s. That was something that had to be done. And then you realise, well, hold on, well, I don't go to clubs, and I don't need that kind of feed from what's currently cool to do what I do. What I do is created from my head and my heart. So I can do that from anywhere, but technologically, I couldn't. So with the internet, yes, I can. I could do interviews. I could do exactly this. Talking to you, 4,000 miles apart or whatever we are. And it made everything so much easier. What I suppose if there's a downside, it means that everyone's got access to the tools now. If you have a laptop and the right software, you can learn how to make a record. It doesn't necessarily mean the record's going to be any good, and the airwaves may be, filled with kind of bits of mediocrity that would normally have been filtered out during the old system. But the fact that it's a level playing field for everyone now, I think is a brilliant scenario. Anyone can have a crack at this. Anyone can have a go at it. Make a video. It's your laptop now becomes your recording studio, your video studio, your photographic editing suite, your communications, your entertainment system. It's absolutely imperative that you do embrace this technology. Otherwise, the idea of an A&R guy, if they still exist, an artist and repertoire guy, coming and knocking on your door or turning up at a club that you're playing in, saying, "Hey, young man, I've got a contract for you. Let's sign you up." It's highly remote that that's ever going to happen again.
For sure. So the specifics of the Backstage Lockdown Club, what are you doing? The performances? Is it kind of like the City Winery thing where you're doing Q&A and?
It's exactly like the City Winery thing, except I don't have to drag my sorry backside halfway around the world to do it, and neither does anyone else. So it's kind of like that. It won't always be Q&As. I think sometimes it'll be, I may do, specific songwriting scenarios where I can talk to fellow songwriters and discuss the process of how it works. It could be Q&As. It could be doing an entire event of cover versions of other people's songs. I do quite a few of those, and I have done over the years, and I find that quite interesting and quite challenging. So I think it's just this absolute connection, and for on a monthly basis when people subscribe to it, I'll be throwing in live versions of songs that they've maybe never heard before, or remixes that are only available through the club. And it also is going to give people, when we eventually get back out there and are allowed to go out and make lots of noise, there'll be a bit the access to early ticket sales for those events will be via the club. So there are quite a few things, and we're adding to it as we go along. The more I discuss it, and the more I think about it, there's more things that I can actually put in there to enhance it.
So how do people find it, or how do people sign up? How do they become club members?
Well, that's the technology's been amazing to plough through to figure out. I've never watched so many YouTube videos of young guys with their hats on backwards, talking about how the technology works. But you can teach old dogs new tricks, as I've just learned. So there's a thing called Patreon up there, which is a system that enables you to access this. So it's quite simple. It's www.patreon.com/Midge, and it takes you straight there where you can sign up. And I said we've just chosen a date to do, for me, a 10 a.m. A very early morning event in order for our Australian and New Zealand and Japanese friends to be able to watch this at a decent time. So the time zone thing is an absolute minefield.
It is.
No idea what my croaky voice might be like at 10 o'clock in the morning, but maybe it'll be a more Q&A type thing than a performance type thing. We'll have to wait and see. So it's that, and you just go for the ride. And if you don't want to be part of it anymore, you drop out after a month. So it's not some kind of long-term fixture that I'm tying you into. You know, who knows? Maybe in a couple of months I'll be tired doing it and don't want to do it anymore. But for now, I'm absolutely loving the whole. It's an exciting process for me.
Yeah, it's new. It's different. It's a new approach to what you've been doing. I think it's super cool. I want to ask you about a song you wrote maybe 6 years ago, a song called I Survived. Was that just to isolate one song from your entire career, was that you taking stock of your career? Was that you kind of, I've always wondering what your place was in the modern day? I was just curious about that specific song.
Yeah, it's a bit older than that. It's been well documented in the past. My run-in with alcohol, like a lot of people do. It's a very insidious thing. It was great fun being out touring and getting off your face and having lots of laughs when you're young, and then you find out that it's not funny anymore when you realise that you can't stop. So it was well documented that I had problems in that area. So 15, 16, 17 years ago, I started writing that song. When I thought that I couldn't write songs without my good friend Jack Daniels with me, and because I remember the Beatles talking about drugs and saying, well, maybe I won't be able to write a good song without LSD or without dope or whatever. And of course, it wasn't true. You know, you come out the other end of it, and it comes back. And when I wrote I Survived, it was about that. It was that specific thing. I survived the one of the major downfalls of being in the entertainment industry, albeit self-induced. So it was more about that rather than surviving in the current world, the current musical world, or the world of relevance. You know, are you still relevant? Is there still a place for you to do that? That kind of thought process is with every artist, and I don't care how much they deny it. We are fragile characters, and we live and die on our last successes. And if you have enough non-successes, you start to doubt your ability, even though you shouldn't. I remember David Bowie saying that if you are complacent and you're happy with where you are at this moment in time, you're not moving fast enough. You should be in an uncomfortable place, and sometimes that's where your best work comes from.
Speaking of Bowie, so many of us love your version of Man Who Sold the World, and you've done Lady Stardust. I mean, I know you're a fan, and he was a colleague. Was Bowie the Rosetta Stone for so much of what came afterward? Was he ground zero?
I think he still probably is ground zero, and a lot of artists, and I know I do this when I'm writing something, even subliminally, it'll cross your mind. You know, would he have done something like this? Would this be palatable to someone like him? Although he probably never really knew a lot of my music, it's still a benchmark. You know, the quality and the standard, and the constant striving to come up with something interesting, rather than just resting on your laurels. So yeah, I think for a lot of artists in all genres of music, we all owe a nod of thanks and respect to David Bowie, because he paved the way. You know, he said it's fine to be out there. It's fine not to have commercial success, because a lot of these ventures weren't commercially successful. So you can't, and things change. Once you've had a commercially successful piece of work, your mind changes, and all the people around you want more of that success. And you start to think differently. All of a sudden you have a parameter, you have a little box that you work within. Well, that box didn't exist when you created the interesting piece of music. So you have to keep reminding yourself that box is invisible and it's only in your head. And you could ignore everyone else. And he was a master at that.
Bowie, of course, part of Live Aid. And I can't let you leave the conversation without talking about Band Aid and Live Aid. You see, Midge, back in the 1980s, kindness and the desire to take care of all humankind was something we all thought about. You were there. You were front and center for Band Aid, Live Aid. Was social consciousness something that was in your blood growing up?
Oh, I'd love to say yes. I don't think I did or got involved any more than any other person on the planet. You know, as I've said many times, my contribution to charity would be you buy the flag, or you buy the pin, or you put the money in the box and you put the sticker on your jacket. That was it. So getting involved in charity work was never really on the cards that I knew of. I think it was maybe too self-centered, like most people are, and certainly most artists are. And then I find myself embroiled in this thing, albeit at the time it was going to be a 6-month project, and I'm still there doing it. Once you dip your toe in that water and you experience things for yourself, you see the world in a very different place. And I think Band Aid and Live Aid and We Are the World and Northern Lights and all of those things that happened in and around that period, it helped redesign the face of charity. Prior to us young guns getting involved in it, charity was always perceived as someone old's position. Someone old got involved in charity, and it was nothing to do with young cool dudes. And of course, that all changed when we saw our heroes and our mentors getting on stage or standing around a microphone singing a song to help other people, and that has forever changed. Now that's the new dynamic. That's the new vision. It's in Band Aid and Live Aid's in history books now, which is a weird thing to say when you're still breathing, but it is because it was so important. So yeah, I didn't see it coming. It wasn't something that was always. It certainly was dormant within me, possibly, but it didn't come to the fore until I spoke to Bob.
It seems like you and Bob Geldof, were both kind of self-deprecating about your expectations for what would happen with the Band-Aid sessions. What were your expectations low? Like, well, maybe they'll come, maybe they'll do it, maybe this will work out.
Well, my expectations were low because it was Bob, really. When he came over and played me the bones of what he had, and I played him the bones of what I had, I realised that this wasn't a very good song. So we really needed as much bolstering as possible, and that came from the stature of the artists involved. So the artists involved, turning it into the media three-ring circus that it became, was imperative to the success of this thing. Had it been just Bob or I singing the song, I don't think it would have seen the light of day. So being self-deprecating, yes, I think you've got to be self-deprecating in this ridiculous industry that we find ourselves in. We started believing the good stuff or the bad stuff that people write about you, you'd never do anything. So yeah, self-deprecation is part of it all. But I think the moment we realised that we had the lineup we had, Boy George and George Michael and Phil Collins and Bono and all of that stuff, we realised we had something special. So it would have been almost impossible not to have a commercial success with it, but to see what it did afterwards, and how much it's resonated with people, and the fact that it's still out there. That song is played every holidays, every Christmas. That's quite amazing. We never saw that at all.
I still remember going to the record store when it came out to buy the 7-inch. It was your goodwill was dormant in you until that came out. Well, it's funny you talked about this, but when I was a kid here in America, it was the Jerry Lewis Telethon. That was my knowledge of what charity and giving was. Something you see on network television and the grandparents watched. And I was saying this before we started recording, but Live Aid was this wonderful shared experience. And I don't know if it could be had in the present day with the internet. This was something you all had to watch MTV. There was one source for it, and we all spent whatever it was, 12 hours that Saturday watching it. It really was this wonderful communal thing, pre-internet. And we were, instead of texting each other, we were calling each other like, oh my God, Zeppelin's playing Stairway to Heaven, or Phil Collins did it. He crossed the ocean. He's at RFK or whatever. It really was a new perspective on everything, and it makes sense that you're still talking about it.
Well, because it's, as I said, it's history. It was one of the major blips on the horizon. Just like Woodstock was in its day. Live Aid certainly was in its day. The global jukebox, hence being termed that. It was something that connected the planet. And technologically, it was a nightmare. Television companies talking about satellite link-ups and, we were saying earlier, it's very difficult for me to even figure out, time zones, let alone, delays on satellites and things and satellite feeds. So it was kind of groundbreaking in many, many different ways. But it was often copied but seldom bettered. And that's not saying that Live Aid was better than any other global events or massive events that have been on. It's that Beatles thing. It's, when people say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to be able to see the Beatles play now? If they were all alive, they were all there." See, you know what? It probably wouldn't, because it wouldn't live up to your expectations.
Right.
So through rose-tinted glasses, we can look back at Live Aid and go, "It was just brilliant." It was brilliant, absolutely, at the time. But I think it lives bigger and bolder in our hearts than in its reality.
When people talk about Live Aid, inevitably they talk about the Queen performance. And I'm trying to remember watching it for my first time as a kid. I remember thinking it was really cool. Was the Queen performance always thought of as iconic from the word go, or did the stature of that performance grow through the years? I truly can't remember.
No, there were two outstanding performances on the day. I mean, there were a lot of very, very good stuff, but to try and peak above the high bar that had already been set by all the artists who appeared was a major feat. And the two were, of course, Queen, who took their 18 minutes that they were allocated. Everyone had 18 minutes. There was a traffic light system as you walked on stage, and nobody knew about it until you're about to step up and do your performance. And you were told that as you walk on, the lights will be green. At 16 minutes, they go amber, and you won't see them turn red, because that means the power goes off. And that kept everyone in time.
I bet.
So Queen had done an 18-minute kind of segue, of greatest hits. Mm-hmm. And it was a way of reminding people just what a powerhouse they were. Queen had been through many highs and lows in their career up to that point, and were taking the stage as just another band, and left the stage being the band that they actually had to remind people that they actually were. But also U2 took the stage and didn't do an 18-minute segued thing. They lost one of the songs because they got lost in the moment and got the girl up dancing, and proved that they were the band they were about to become.
Yep.
So those two things on the day were absolute highlights.
I remember Bono jumping off stage. That was legend.
Yeah, and he managed to get back on, which he might not be able to do these days.
What was it like as the organizer playing with Ultravox? Was it like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do it, or I don't have time for this?
Oh, listen, I didn't organise anything. It's, you look at something like that, and the guy behind the microphone or whatever gets the acclaim, but it's the myriad of people behind them that made it work. I think for us it was petrifying because, Ultravox at the time, as I said, we were using fairly basic equipment. It was pre-MIDI, which is the system that allows machines to talk to each other. So everything we had to have two of, because they had to be adapted in order to play live. Ultravox took 5 hours to do a sound check, and there was no sound check at Live Aid. So we walked on having chosen 4 of the songs that used the least technology that we could perform. I mean, we had to do Vienna. That was just a given. So walking on there was absolutely petrifying. Not because of the crowd, that was petrifying enough. Petrifying walking on there and expecting to go and nothing. It's just too embarrassing to even contemplate. So I think the first 10, 15 minutes went by in a nanosecond.
I bet.
But I still have highlights in my head. People clapping the Vienna drum rhythm, which was just excellent. It was wonderful. And the rest of it is just a blur.
I bet. All right. So, Midge, the Backstage Lockdown Club, it is available on Patreon. People can sign up. They can really get into your inner sanctum. They can talk to you and share this experience, and the songwriting, the performance is really cool. And I think we talked about this earlier today, the ability to be malleable and flexible and find a new way as an artist to bully through the pandemic. You did it. I think this is super cool. And I think it's really cool that you came on to talk today. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure.